Have you ever stopped to think about the massive, kinda invisible system that decides what you eat, where you work, and even how you think about your future? Well, today, we're diving deep into one of the most powerful forces on the planet, capitalism. I mean, it's pretty much the backbone of our 21st century world. It's so present that a lot of the time we don't even really see it. But, to understand our society and even ourselves, we really need to get how this system works. So let's pull back that curtain. Okay, so what is it fundamentally? Well, at its core, capitalism is an economic system where private individuals and companies own the means of production, the tools, the factories, the land, and they operate them for one main reason, to make a profit. That profit motive? It's the engine that drives the entire system.
But that's where the big question comes in, the one we're really going to tackle in this explainer. Is this system the ultimate machine for creating wealth and innovation? Or is it actually a recipe for inequality and crisis? Let's take a look at the evidence.
To really get the promise of capitalism, we have to start with its most famous advocate, the 18th century philosopher and economist Adam Smith. Smith had this idea that was honestly completely revolutionary for his time. He argued that when people are just out there chasing their own self-interest, the baker bakes bread to make money, not because he's a great guy, they're guided by what he called an invisible hand to actually benefit all of society. And here's how that invisible hand is supposed to work. It all starts with individual ambition. That ambition fuels competition, and that competition forces businesses to get better, to innovate, to become more efficient. So what's the end result according to Smith? A more prosperous society for everybody. That, right there, is the promise. But, yeah, there's always a but, isn't there? As the Industrial Revolution just exploded, the promise of capitalism collided with a super harsh new reality. And this exposed what Karl Marx would later call the system's great contradiction. Marx looked around and saw society splitting right down the middle into two brand new, distinct classes. On one side, you had the bourgeoisie, the ones who owned all the capital, the factories, the machines. And on the other side, you had the proletariat, the workers, who owned nothing except their own ability to work for a wage. And this is the core tension Marx identified. On one hand, industrial capitalism was creating wealth and productive power on a scale humanity had literally never seen before. But on the other hand, it was producing just immense suffering, incredibly dangerous factories, child labor, crushing poverty, and sprawling slums. In his view, the value that the workers were creating was being captured by the owners, and that's what created these two extremes.
Now, with a tension like that at its core, something had to give. Capitalism couldn't just stay the same. And so throughout the 20th century, it was forced to change and adapt, swinging back and forth between crisis and reform. Just look at this timeline. It's like a giant pendulum swinging for 100 years. The Great Depression completely shattered faith in unregulated markets. That led to what some call the golden age of managed or Keynesian capitalism, which meant more government spending and stronger social safety nets. But then, by the 1980s, that pendulum swung all the way back. You had this neoliberal turn, favoring deregulation and slashing rules for businesses, basically unleashing market forces once again. And that set the stage for the massive 2008 financial crisis. And all of that, well, it brings us right here, to today. These historical swings have really ushered in our current age of extremes, especially when you look at the concentration of wealth. Just try to wrap your head around this number. As of 2025, the world's 3,000 or so billionaires hold a combined wealth of $18.3 trillion. That is more than the entire economies of China and Japan put together. It's the single largest concentration of wealth in all of human history. And to put that in perspective on a more personal or maybe impersonal level, the fortune of a single person can reach these just astronomical heights. In 2025, Elon Musk's personal wealth swelled to over $700 billion. He's the first person in history to accumulate more than $500 billion. And if you look at the United States, this inequality is incredibly stark. The top 0.1% of the population now owns 12.6% of the nation's total wealth. For comparison, the entire bottom 50%, half the country, controls just 2.5%. So you gotta ask, where does all this extreme wealth come from? Is it all just brilliant innovation? Well, according to an analysis by Oxfam, that's not really the whole story. A huge 60% of billionaire wealth doesn't come from entrepreneurship. It comes from things like inheritance, monopoly power, or cronyism, which is basically using your close relationships with government to get an unfair advantage. This incredible concentration of wealth and the crises that come with it has kicked off this really fierce debate about the future. How does capitalism need to evolve to face the huge challenges of our time? You can kind of boil it down to two big competing visions. First, there's the traditional view, shareholder capitalism. This says a company's only legal duty is to maximize profit for its owners. Simple. Move a factory overseas for cheaper labor, boost the stock price. But there's a newer idea that's gaining a lot of ground, stakeholder capitalism. This view says that businesses are also responsible to their employees, their communities, and the environment. So maybe you choose to keep that factory open, even if it's a little less profitable. So at the end of the day, what have we seen? Capitalism is definitely not some static, unchanging thing. It has changed dramatically over the centuries, often because of a crisis. It's proven to be remarkably adaptable. So the big question for our time is, can it adapt once more to solve the huge, profound challenges, from extreme inequality to climate change, that the system itself helped create?